Give it just a second, let people join, and I'm going to try and post the links in here. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm looking for the link. So if you guys could, while we're waiting, can you guys go ahead and start sharing this so that we can get more people to join? And we'll get started here in just a minute. Okay, so. Okay, I got the link. Hi, Linda. Hey, Brandon, thanks for joining. We're almost there. Give us just a second. Your news feeds. Make sure I typed everything right. Okay. Hey, Jason, thanks for joining. Here's the link. If you guys could go ahead and start sharing this with your news feeds, that would be great. Hey, Maureen. Okay, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Alyse, for coming from all the way to us from Australia. That is wonderful.
My pleasure.
It's so nice to have you. So tonight is going to be an interesting night. So Alyse and I have met online, and we've been doing a lot of talking about. We both have some similar situations where we're both adult survivors of being erased or the parental alienation. And she is a clinical psychotherapist, and she is currently studying for her PhD in parental alienation. Yep. So this is great stuff because we don't have a lot of this going on. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about what you're doing, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited to be here speaking to Dawn. Like, I've been talking to Dawn a lot. I've just got one of my dogs running in and out. He's a rescue dog. He likes to hang out with me, so he's a little distracting. But yeah, so my name's Alyse. I'm a clinical psychotherapist. I have a master's degree in counselling and psychotherapy, and I have my own practice. So I work with patients pretty much all day, every day, and I specialize in work with adult survivors of parental alienation like myself. So what I do is I speak to them, and I've had a long time in therapy myself because my alienator was very severe with us, with my siblings and I. So we grew up in that environment. So I've had parental alienation in my life, my whole life. There's never a day where it doesn't affect us in some way or the other. So not only am I a survivor, but I specialize in counseling adult survivors. So I'm pretty blessed. I get to sit in that space with a lot of people from overseas and face to face with me. And yeah, and I'm embarking on a PhD in researching adult survivors of parental alienation and the treatment that would work for us, traditional versus non-traditional. That's what I'm going to be researching. So I'll be looking for people next year to be interviewing. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. So I'm really looking forward to talking to everyone today.
That is so exciting. That I mean, we are blessed actually, to have you here and to help us try and do some research, because we don't have a lot of resources for people like us that have gone through this. We can dig around and we can see what other researchers have come up with. We can participate in some studies, but we don't really have a lot for how to work through and overcome some of the things that we go through. So this is really great.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to speaking to some of the alienated parents out there too, and because Dawn and I have a very similar story, and we wanted to come on today and actually answer questions for anyone who is an alienated parent or maybe an adult survivor, a child adult survivor of PA2. If you're on and you want to talk to us, that's awesome as well.
Right. So just a little housekeeping really quick, because this conversation is probably going to go pretty fast. And so if you have questions, I'm going to probably scroll through at the end like I have been doing in the last couple of talks, because it's hard to go back and forth. And I don't want to keep interrupting our guests. So if you have questions, put them in there and I will try and go through them towards the end when we do a Q&A. So we have a couple of things to talk about. And one is what you're doing, what you're embarking on, and also what you have already done, which is the Senpai, the social communication model. So where do you want to start? Where would you like to start?
What about if we talk a little bit about our histories and what it's like for us being adult children of PA? And keep in mind, I want everyone to keep in mind today who's listening that we're both of the severe end of the parental alienation. It may not apply to you. So just take that into consideration. And if anybody's triggered at all during this conversation, it's really, really important that we don't want to be upsetting anyone. So if you're really in a space of processing at the moment or having a really difficult time, this conversation may get difficult. So just be aware of that and just maybe go and like talk to somebody or and just get yourself some self
exactly
care.
And one thing to keep in mind too, as from the parents, is that we as children have to start talking about this, and a lot of it isn't for the parents to hear, because they're pretty familiar with what happens and they're kind of living it every day. But we need other children like us out there to hear what we have to say, so that we can get them to help use their voice and help raise the volume. We need the volume, we need the momentum. So like she said, if it can be a little difficult to hear some of the things that we talk about, and we don't mean that to be hard on the parents whatsoever. So try and keep that in mind, that there's reasons why we feel like we really do need to start talking about some of the things that happen, so that we can help other people like us understand that they're not alone, that there's other people like them. Because that's what I was struggling with when I first started finding out, is I thought I was the only person in the world dealing with what I was dealing with. So it's unfamiliar to a lot of people.
And the other thing is, we want to get the message out there to parents who are warring, and this tribal warfare going on between the alienating parents' family and the targeted parents' family. This has to stop. This has to stop. This is the message. And we're going to talk today to what that's like for us when we're in the middle of that, and to have that undercurrent story running through our entire lives is very, very difficult. And a lot of people who are fighting and divorcing and going through courts and everything, they're all point scoring, and they're all wanting to compete, and they're all wanting to get the child with them more, all of this sort of stuff. All of this sort of stuff is not focusing on what the child wants. It's not doing that at all. So we need, and I understand that there are a lot of personality disorders at play here too, and that's very, very difficult if you are a targeted parent. And today we're going to talk to ways about how to still work with the child if you are the targeted parent, what to do, how to keep moving through that as well. Hopefully to the point where you are reunited with your child, like both Dawn and I were, which is good news. And we did have relationships with our targeted parents. Yeah.
It is there's definitely hope out there for that, and trying to get them to that point is what is our goal, to help the targeted parents get, reunite with their children and have a long lasting relationship with them. And that's, you're going to bring a lot of information for that tonight. So I'm really excited about that. So how long have you been studying this aspect and wanting to go into your PhD with parental alienation adult survivors?
So with the PA stuff, I only really discovered it about 4 years ago. It wasn't something that any therapist had ever mentioned. In all the years that I had been going in trying to get some sort of psychological help about feeling abandonment, anxiety, they're the two things that I really struggle with the most.
Uh-huh.
So, and I'm very aware of those two emotions within me when they're triggered. And now I know why. But for years, every psychologist, counselor I went to, no one ever mentioned parental alienation. And they often would tell me that I was too difficult, it was too hard, there was no treatment. It's kind of like, okay, so for years you sort of go along thinking, oh, there's nothing. And then because I've worked in disabilities and mental health for 34 years, I was very drawn to that community. I didn't really know why, but I was very drawn to that community because a lot of them don't have voices either. So they're my people. They're who I work with all the time. People with no voice. So I'm a big advocate, and I didn't realize that that was part of my trauma. So being able to stand up and advocate on behalf of people with mental health conditions and disabilities. So I love my people. I work with people who are homeless. I work with people with severe and persistent mental illness, schizophrenia, all the biggies. They're often very they're big outliers, and I always assimilated with them and being an outlier, going to a lot of schools, being moved around a lot, having
Right.
so I work with them. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I actually was on LinkedIn and I saw something from one of the women who posts a lot on LinkedIn. Her name's Amanda. And and I read it and I thought, oh my gosh, that's me. That's
Is that Amanda
me.
Amanda Sillers with Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Moe?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
She's one of the ones that I actually read first too. It was
Yes.
her and another person. And that's when I started thinking, wait a minute, this sounds really, because I knew I was abducted. I knew my whole life. I knew that was my story, but we also thought it was a joke. We treated it like a joke. My mom, laughed about it. It was, it wasn't ever taken seriously.
Well,
And it
how
was,
better to throw you off the scent than to
well,
do
yeah.
that?
She's like, I rescued her. We went down there and we did all this. And it was something that we joked about. And so when I started going into counseling, my counselor didn't say anything about parental alienation or coercive control, or what are some other, the emotional cutoff. None of those words were ever brought up whatsoever. But the one thing she did bring up was CPTSD. Why, I can't even say that sometimes.
Yeah.
Too many letters. CPTSD was one of the things that she did say that, you probably have some symptoms of, but she never tied the two together. So there's a lack of awareness in a lot of
Big time.
cases with a
Hmm.
lot of some of the therapists and stuff like that. So that's why we want to talk about this, so that we're bringing that awareness in there. So when you just mentioned that you moved a lot, that you went from school to school, house to house, but you have two siblings. So was this as difficult for them as it was for you? Did you guys have different levels of how this affected you?
Yes. We all have very similar levels of trauma, but it manifests in different ways within each of us. So basically, my story is my mother, who was the alienating parent. If I look from an intergenerational trauma point of view, she was very traumatized as a child. She was born into a family where a year before they had lost a son. So they'd lost a baby to SIDS. So a year later, my mother was born on his birthday. So from that moment, the setup of abandonment had started. So the intergenerational trauma pattern was really fixing at that point. And my grandmother had no counseling. She had no help with the baby. She basically took the baby to the hospital. They handed back the baby clothes to her. She returned home and was expected to get on with life. As far as I can ascertain, at that point, she really withdrew and had not bonded properly with my mother, who then had attachment trauma and then grew up with attachment stuff going on, lack of attachment stuff. My grandfather was always out farming. So basically, that's where I believe the personality disorder stuff started coming through with her. So, and then she was sent off to boarding school at a very young age as well, I think 11 or 12, and didn't come. She basically never returned home. So, and went straight into nursing. So this pattern really set in concrete the abandonment stuff and the personality disorder stuff. And then once she didn't do any work around that from what I can gather. And then once she married my father, he was pretty young at the time. They both were early 20s. All of a sudden she's pregnant. All of a sudden he didn't really want to settle down and was out playing around doing whatever he felt like. And then her abandonment was triggered, and therefore the alienation started at that point. So we know that if there's a dysregulation with the person with the personality disorder, i.e. she started to get anxious around what my father was doing, could potentially take us. So she started to think all these things. And then that was our world from there on. He basically left her with 3 children under 3. And then she spent the rest of our growing up years protecting us from him. He was the monster. He was this, he was that. He was going to take us. He was going to do all of these things. So it was a big campaign of denigration against him. And we were moved a lot. So just to be kept safe, kept away from him. We were cut off from all of his side of the family. We were not allowed to speak about him. Mm-hmm. We're never allowed to speak about him. So this went on for years and years, and it's really difficult to grow up in that environment because you never go through a grieving process either. So to lose a parent that quickly, who I did have a connection with, because I was the oldest one, is very, very traumatizing at such a young age. And you grow up with an alienating parent who basically is in complete control of everything in your whole life. This is how they control us. So they liken it to being around a cult leader, and it is very much like that. And then so that's basically how you grow up. A lot of the time, we have to be extremely careful what we say, how we act. We're never allowed to mention the other parent who's missing. We're not allowed to call them by name. All of these sort of things is all parental alienation. And I've got to tell you, it's not okay, because the one thing that the 3 of us cannot remember is very many good childhood memories of anything. We remember different things with our grandparents because we lived with them, but then we were taken from them too. So we basically grew up in isolation.
Family.
Constantly. You're not part of any community. You're not part of any family. It's really bizarre, and you grow up without a sense of self. So this is really a strange space to grow up in as a child.
Yeah, and you don't get those connections with the family, the extended family, and it's super important. And I didn't know that either myself until later in life, that and with my kids and the importance of them having extended family. And I'm thinking, well, I don't have a lot of extended family, so it's kind of eerie. The more people that we talk to, how many similarities we have, and the same feelings and the same types of things that are occurring are so identical. It is very eerie to think about that. And the fact that you mentioned that you were in school, but you could never really plant any roots really, because you had to be prepared at all times to move again, because
Yeah.
that's how much you were just moving all the time.
Yeah. And to have the school be told that we could be taken at any minute, and we're not allowed out the front of the school ground. We're not allowed, like on excursions, we could be taken on excursions. We didn't know who was going to take us. So this is the really extreme end. This is the severe parental alienation that we're talking about. We don't know how many of us are out there who have lived this existence, because there's not a lot of people who talk about it.
Mhm.
So that's what my PhD is going to be around too. We're really going to be looking at that, because it's not okay and it's not normal.
It
So,
isn't. And what's important is that you and I have had a chance to look back at it, go through it, process it, work with it, forgive some of it, and go through this healing process as best we can. But the people out there that don't know that they went through it haven't gotten that yet. So
no.
it's important, because they're going through life not realizing why they're reacting the way they react, or why things keep happening, why they are attracting certain types of people or certain types of things or events going on in their lives. And it's all because of that lack of awareness. So it's important that your research is going to be amazing to help reach those people and provide resources.
It's, I also want to say it's not all doom and gloom here to people who are watching, because the whole time that I was separated from my father, I missed him. I wasn't allowed to speak about it. I missed him. I loved him. I knew that he was out there somewhere. And even though I was being told, pardon?
We have that in common too. We didn't forget.
Right. No, we don't forget. And that's a big message, that we even that it is, we are in the severe PA category. We are saying to you, do not lose hope. Right. We were still thinking about you. We were still wondering whether you were thinking about us. We're still, well, I was looking in the letterbox every single birthday, every single Christmas, every single Easter, looking for something from you to say. They are still thinking about us. They still love us. They still love us, because that's the ultimate thing. If we believe for 1 second that you're not still thinking about us, that's a very dangerous place for us to be. That's abandonment 101.
Yep. And rejection. We feel like you rejected, that we're being rejected, even though that's not true. So one of the things that I notice a lot of parents doing now, that I can't stress enough how important this is, and how much it would have meant to, me, and probably you as well, is the special sentiments, not the, not the pouring out and over excessive, but some of just the nice, simple notes of, about, I just want you to know I love you. I'm here. I'm doing this. The things that people are leaving for children who have access to the internet today. We didn't have this access. So it's super important that you are easy to find, and your message is easy to find, and that it's the right message. That is, I see a lot of parents doing more and more of that. And I want to encourage them to continue. Do that every day, once a week, however you want to do it. But it's really important that you do leave those breadcrumbs out there for your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So that when they put your name in Google, it comes up.
Yep.
Yeah. And you can be contacted when that child or teenager or adult, whoever it is, whatever time that they're choosing to come in, they have got that contact with you. Yeah.
Yes. So keep doing that. That's so important. So I was going to ask you a question about your siblings. So we were talking a little bit about your siblings and how there was differences, and how are they now as adults? And now that you're doing this and you've brought some awareness into the situation, how are they now?
Yeah, so the way we work is I do a lot of the research in PA, and because it's my topic big time, and I give them little bits of information, research papers and stuff, and they read that. So yeah, so it's usually one person in the family starts the train and then other people either get on or they don't. So for some people, the realization stage, which is the stage that it's called when we actually figure out, oh my gosh, I've actually been lied to, or this person, I'm seeing this behavior in this alienating parent a lot. She's actually alienating other people. I'm not really okay with that. I'm not okay with that behavior. So we kind of start to question a lot of stuff, and then we might hear different things too about past stories that just don't make sense. So we get to a point where we have a realization. So that could come in the form of some sort of crisis. It can come in just because we've figured out what has been going on all this time. But hopefully with education, we're not going to be just sort of floating around there out in the ocean hoping that we come across an island that's going to teach us about parental alienation. Well, actually, what I want to get happening is the teachers in the schools and education are actually talking about this, and at the universities, because even my entire master's degree, no one mentioned parental alienation. It wasn't on the curriculum. And that is bizarre to me. So it wasn't until I did family systems therapy that it even got mentioned. So, and that's pretty huge. So it's a very forgotten, or maybe not forgotten, but it needs to be talked about a lot more, and it's just not. So
yeah, it's not taken as serious as some other
no.
things.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so my siblings, I find things that I might think that they would be open to reading, and then I'll send it through to them. So this is often the pattern in families that I work with that I've noticed. Once one person starts to realize some sort of intergenerational trauma and the impact that it's having on the rest of the family, either people really turn against you or they embrace it. It's just going to be how it is. And it's about being comfortable in that space, because it's about my journey, my realization, my truth, and trying to piece together an authentic sense of self, because that's one thing that being an alienated child does. We don't have an authentic sense of self because we're not taught to think independently or have a voice. We're not taught to do that. We're taught what to think, basically.
What to think, what to say it, how to act, and what not to do. That's
yeah.
constant.
Yeah. And by saying that, it doesn't necessarily mean that what we're thinking or saying that's really on the surface is actually truly what's in our heart. Often we have to maintain this. It's actually called. I'll figure it out.
Uh-oh. Give us just a second. I'm not sure if it's mine or hers, but I know we're having internet trouble. So hang tight for a second. Can you guys hear me in the chat? Oh, it looks like we might have lost her. So see if we can get her to get back in. Hold on, let me see if I can get her back in here. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Robert. I know she was having some internet problems earlier, so okay, she is responding. Hold on just a sec. She might just have to dial back in. Dial back in, listen to me. Okay, she's coming back in. Give her just a sec. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll through a little bit while we're waiting. Here she comes.
Okay. Yep, we're back.
Phew.
Okay, great.
It's hard
That was
to tell
good
who it
that
is,
we're
if
back.
it's me or you.
Yeah, no, we're having trouble with internet in Australia. I think a lot of people are on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, well, duh. Yeah.
That
It's
is Zoom
really
too.
overloading.
Zoom is having some trouble too. So thank you guys for bearing with us. Okay, where were we? What were you? You were saying something.
Yeah, so I think we're just saying that try not to take things personally if the children are saying things to you or acting a certain way. We need to remember that these children are really in the middle here. So we've got to be very, very careful. And the number one thing I need to say to any parents out there who are being targeted is do not say anything negative about the alienating parent to that child. They're already in warfare at home. They don't need any extra stuff. They don't need you to try and get them to align to you. They will know really a lot of the time what's going on, who's safe, who's not, who has unconditional positive regard for them. They also know when parents are becoming really unwell and not looking after themselves because of the stress put on them from the alienating parents. So it's vital that you stay healthy. It's vital that you get help. It's vital that you do not go down with the ship, because if the child comes back to you, one, they don't want to know that they have been the cause of you becoming this really unwell person who's struggling. They don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
We need you to be very healthy, very well, focus on your work, make sure that everything in your life is going along swimmingly. If you can't see us, make sure that you are taking care of yourselves, because
and be happy. Be
happy.
Even though
and
you're
be
not,
happy.
but be happy. Be happy on the outside. Let your child see that you are happy no matter what, that you are a person that they want to be drawn to
be with,
are attracted and drawn towards you. So use happiness and love to attract them back to you. And they will migrate to that automatically, because it's a natural thing when it kind of gives them a little bit of trust.
Be the healthy parent, because they're already living with someone with a personality disorder. So that's a dangerous place, and it's not a fun place. I've got to tell you, it is not a good place to be. They're very unpredictable, and if we don't align with them, it's a very dangerous place for us. So if we get contact visits with you, please make them as normal as possible. Be the healthy parent. We don't need any more crap being thrown at us.
And one of the best things too, and you already mentioned it really, is that don't talk bad about the other parent, but also talk about the situation either.
Nope, never.
Because
don't do it.
It makes them feel like it's very heavy. I don't know how to explain it other than it's very heavy for the child, and it feels too much. And sometimes it makes them sad, or they don't understand. So that's confusing. So it's just best that when you do have the time, that it's all about them, and creating those really happy, rememberable moments that they can always hold on to, because I'll tell you what, they will hold on to them. Just like you, I had an attachment to my father as well. And I remembered him. So it didn't matter what was said as I was growing up, because I already knew the person that I had that attachment with. So when I became the adult, I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that that was to look for him. So keep that in mind, that the more positive and the more loving that you show to your child, the more memories they're going to hold of you, and have that to hold on to. They need that to hold on to. They really
Yeah.
do.
Even as an adult, when I reconnected with my dad when I was 30, any time he went to say anything bad about my mum, I couldn't hear it. It's too much for us. It's just too much. Don't do it. But the other thing it does is, if you have your children with you and you're talking to them about this stuff, you got to keep in mind that they also love the alienating parent, even though it's a trauma bonding kind of, we still love the other parent. So to hear anything bad about them is very difficult for us. And especially if you tell us to keep secrets or anything like that, that's a space that no child should ever be put in. And I do know that we were given notes with phone numbers on it, money in case we were stolen on contact visits, to keep an eye on my brother and sister. Don't do that to children. It's not okay to be doing that to children ever. And don't ever get them to keep secrets, because especially about the other parent, because that creates a really strange kind of space for us. Like, we're not allowed to tell you that, but they've told us this. It's like, that's not what a child's world should be. And
When it becomes a double-edged sword where it hurts it on both sides now. It was, when it's realized on the same, the same way on both sides, then it hurts on both sides.
Yeah. And then if we ever say anything bad about the other parent and then they have ammunition and we didn't even mean to give it to them, then we sit in a space of shame and confusion, because now we've kind of done something to this parent that parent's going to use, and then they're going to fight more, and you hear it. This is the thing people forget. Children haven't got much to do except they're in the background and we're playing with our toys. We're often listening or overhearing adult conversations. We can hear the conversations on the phone. We know when you're not letting us speak to the targeted parent. We know when there's presence coming to the house that you're hiding. You cannot do all of those behaviors for years on end without us seeing something. And I remember my grandmother at the letterbox on my birthday, I would be watching the letterbox. The postie would come, she would run out there before I got there on a mission, figure out, okay, there's the letter, and hide it. That's all it took for me to know that my dad or my grandmother on my dad's mum had sent me something. And that's, apart from the fact that I didn't get it, I knew that they were thinking about me. So even if you think, oh, they're not going to get the letters, they're not going to get this, you just don't know what the children have seen, and you don't know what that's going to plant.
Yeah.
So we're always watching.
Yeah. And then, some of the things, when the children are hearing that negative piece, it does exhibit itself in other forms, such as maybe upset stomachs and stuff like that. So that constant listening to some of that stuff can actually seem like the child is sick quite often. Because I know I used to have stomach aches quite a bit.
Okay.
And nobody ever knew why. So can you talk about that and how children turn that, what they're hearing, into how it makes them feel, like as if they have an upset stomach?
Well, if I was to guess it from a clinical point of view, the first thing I would think of is it's what we call a somatic sign. So if I was feeling very, very anxious because of stuff I was hearing or seeing, that's where it would manifest for me, and maybe come across as an upset stomach for a child. That's what I'm wondering. So without much more information, or not being a doctor of, physical doctor, GP or something, and
Yeah.
no, they could never find out what was wrong with you. I'm just wondering if it was a somatic sign from the anxiety, from the space that you were being put in
So I'm
as a
wondering if
gift.
that's something that we can, or you can, as you're doing your research, if that's something we can piece together and actually show that many of the children have these symptoms
Mm.
that
Yeah.
with this.
Well, anxiety and depression and low self-esteem are three of the big things that children who are being alienated or caught in the middle of it experience. So, and then they grow up to then have other sort of side effects like addictions and just abandonment wounds the size of, you know, the craters on the moon. So when I work therapeutically with people who come in and sometimes they don't even know that they're adult children of PA. It's not until I talk to them and
Mhm.
put together all of the different things that we go, oh my gosh, okay, so let me ask you some more questions and then we'll start PA work. And the looks of shock and relief and things that I get in my clinic are unbelievable. So yeah, it's huge. And then we start abandonment work, and then we start working on putting the pieces together, which is very difficult, as you know, Dawn, because a lot of the time we're lied to. So
Yeah, we have the work to do. We have to figure that out. And that's why I asked you that question, because we don't know if we have adult children on this call today. We don't know who's listening. And so I want to bring up some of the things that we may have felt, like having that upset stomach all the time. And it's, you know, nobody knows why, nobody understands why, and nobody's really doing anything about it. And because of the anxiety or the depression, the identity crisis, those are a lot of different things that might start helping people to start thinking that I need to look into this a little bit more, because that's how we found out, right? We
yeah,
stumbled across something. This could be something that someone stumbles across.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
okay to ask and to start looking and reaching out and, you know, doing some research. And we're here, either one of us, you know, we can be contacted and ask in discretion, um, where it's confidential and not shared with anybody else, because we want to help people understand what happened to them so that they can process that, because they'll need to go through that too before they can really decide whether or not to reach out to their parent that they've been erased from or taken from.
yeah. So that's a different step. And often we know in the research that talking to the alienating parent and asking them, did you do this? Were you involved in this? Were you lying to me? Is not a good place to go. Because yeah, in my experience, that caused more trouble than anything else. So just simply because they haven't done in my particular case, my mother hasn't done any work around that. She has no insight into it, and she has a personality disorder. So
She's not
for
going to.
me to be saying, did you do this? What was behind all those behaviors? She has a whole other justification list as to why. And those sentences and stories are very ingrained. It's like a cyclical maladaptive pattern that just goes round and round and round. It's rote. It just comes off the tongue. This is why I did this. That's why I did this. This was going to happen. And these stories are very believed by the alienating parents. So to turn around later and go, well, actually, you know what? I was lying. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's highly unlikely to happen. So for those alienated adult children that I work with, and I know this too, if they go back to the alienating parent and they confront them, there's not a lot of good stuff potentially going to happen in that space. So somehow we need to try and be okay with that and try and put the pieces together that are true, and that's a space that I live in every single day, still trying to put pieces together. And by doing that, when I reunited with my dad, I also reunited with his brother. So, and my uncle, Dennis. And Dennis said to me when he re-met me, he said, "Oh my God, I've missed you so much. I loved you so much as a child. And I'm heartbroken that I've not get to be in your life for all this
That must
time."
have been amazing for you, though. Something that just melts some of that ice that we build
Oh,
up, or that shell that we.
Is a double-edged sword, because then you sort of realize, oh my God, I've
That's
missed out
true.
on an entire life with an uncle who loved me that much. What could that have been?
Yeah.
You know,
I had the same realization when I reunited with my dad, that I had 3 brothers. And after, I was so excited that, oh my gosh, I have my own family. I don't have to accept the step family that rejected me year after year. I have my own family. And then I realized I had my own family. And so yeah, then you start going through that processing part, and you
yeah,
start realizing, what you lost. And
yeah,
so that is something that, as adult children that are thinking about this, there is a process that you work through
yeah.
without the parents.
And it doesn't stop, does
No,
it?
you don't have to rush it.
Yeah.
You start, and you'll know, at least I did, and I think you did. I think we knew that when we talked to either parent, what we could ask without coming right out and saying something specific. And that's how we kind of get our answers. We start just talking little by little. And one of the things my dad did or didn't do, which I think really was to his advantage, is that he didn't say anything about my mom, nothing
Good.
derogatory.
Thank
He always
goodness.
said, when I asked him, so this is what my mom had told me, can you tell me about that scenario? He said, I loved your mom, and I still love your mom. And I don't remember that, but I know that we were both, 20, 21. We were young, we were stupid, and we probably, we made mistakes. I made mistakes, and I know that I did not treat her the way she wanted to be treated. And, so he did not turn it onto her. He just said, look, we were young
Yeah,
adults.
yeah, own it. Own it.
He owned it, and he did not make excuses, and he did not say one bad thing about her.
Yeah,
So
well done to him.
that was key. I think that was really key of him, to make sure that he never went there. And it really drew me in. And
Yeah.
and then, it helped to start processing and understanding. And I knew that I could ask him questions and there was no judgment, and that he wasn't going to
That's
turn
key
it.
too. Yes.
He wasn't going to
Yes.
turn it and make me feel bad about what he says about my mom. And I don't have that guilt or that added stress of it. So that was so, so, so important. If I can't stress anything, never, ever, even after reunification, even if they ask, don't say something bad.
I agree with you, Dawn. Unless we want to know something very specific, don't be offering any unsolicited information. Just don't do it. If I'm going to ask you a question, and and I'll say to him, that's enough. That's enough. Don't tell me anymore. I don't want to hear anymore. That's it. Yeah. So, but my mum, my alienating parent, has never in my life said a good thing about my dad at all. Not one. I can't even think of one. So that's not a good space.
No, it's not. And you know that you can't go and start talking about it there either. So that's also not a good thing.
Yeah. But the other thing is it also, and this is what people who are arguing and divorcing and carrying on need to think about, is great. You guys are fighting and divorcing and splitting off other sides of your family and not talking to your husband's family, not talking to your wife's family, because PA is not just a mum doing it to the dad. It's dads do it to the mums as well. And I want to be really clear about that. This is not a gender issue. This is a child psychological abuse issue and a human rights issue. It's not gender. Dawn and I are very, very firm on that. It's not about men versus women whatsoever. So don't even come at us with those questions. We're not interested at all. We want to talk about from the child's perspective what it's like for us. And when you guys are all fighting and carrying on, the light is off the child, and your arguing and everything is cutting us off from our grandparents on the other side. It's cutting us off from our aunts, our uncles, our cousins. Like that is not okay. And siblings, that's not okay. Don't do it. It's not a good world to grow up in, because what happens then is when you get a bit older, you're missing out on everyone's life events. So now you're being erased from family photographs. So you're no longer going to anyone's weddings or funerals or anything, 21st, 18th, all of that side of the family, all these different developmental milestones you're not involved in anymore. You're not getting invited to this. You don't know. And then later on, when you reunite, it's like you're looking through these albums with all these people, but you're not part of that. And they're generally first cousins, grandparents' funerals, weddings. That is not okay. Like, don't do that. It affects everything. And even now, if there's a wedding on or a funeral on, the conversation always comes up. He better not be coming. He better not know about this. If he turns up, I'm not going to stay. You hear this, and there's this big division within the church, and this, or whatever it is, and this undercurrent of parental alienation, cut-offs, who's sided with who, who's aligned with who. We have to be aware of this all the time, don't we, Dawn? It's like,
who's here? Yeah. I have to know who's here so I know what I can and can't say.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's boring. It's bullshit on a whole other level. And children just should not be exposed to that. Just cut it out, cut it out.
Yeah. One thing too, if you look at, they display a lot of family and ancestry stuff with a tree, right? The tree is kind of like the symbol of a family. So we have ancestors at the top, and as you go down, it's their descendants, and then you're part of the tree trunk or closer to the trunk. So when you think about, for the children out there, the adult children that might be listening, if you look at this tree, it's supposed to be a tree that goes straight up and then it branches out. Now, picture if you are erased from one of your family, your mother or your father, cut the tree in half, and only half of it is filled out and the other half is empty.
Yeah.
That's not right. You have two sides of this tree, and there's family on both sides. And the children deserve to know who their families are on both sides.
Exactly, Dawn. And the stories that come with that, like to have grandparents alienated is not okay, because I only found out the other month that my grandmother, my dad's mother, was actually adopted. So she's got a whole bunch of stuff going on there that nobody knows about. So there's all this tapestry of what was that like for her? What's her story? I have no idea. And then my grandfather, where did he come from? What was he like? What was his life like? What did he do? To not know any of that stuff is really odd, because you don't know who you are. You don't know who
where you came from, what you
where it
look
came
like.
from. Exactly. Why do I have these features? Is it
Yeah.
because they came from here, there? What was it? What did they go through? So part of having grandparents in the life, and I want to speak about grandparents because they're crucial, and I get contacted all the time by grandparents
Mhm.
who are just
We have a lot of them
they
here. There's a lot
yeah, it's just they form amazing bonds with babies and children. And then if something goes on and parental alienation comes into the picture, they now have no relationship with those little children that they're in love with. And having a grandparent around is vital connect. It's a vital piece of who we are. And they give different love to than parents do.
listening.
I spent quite a few years living with my grandmother and my grandfather. So I know this. They gave me different love. They gave me unconditional love. They would be with me. They would tuck me in. They would do all this stuff because my parents were off fighting. So my mum's at work. My dad's not allowed around. We've got a loaded bloody shotgun at the front door in case he turns up. All this shit. So I know, full
Oh
on.
my gosh.
So, and then there's my grandparents who I do know were aligning with my mum against my dad, and that's not okay either, but they were there for me to have a relationship with me and make my porridge in the morning before I went to school, make sure that I had my sandwiches for lunch. They're an integral part. And when my grandfather died, I was devastated because I'd felt like I'd lost the only person in the whole world who actually had always been there for me.
Mhm.
So it's really tricky. Even though he aligned with my mum and believed all her stories against my dad, I still had a connection with him. But having said that, I didn't ever have a connection with my grandfather on my dad's side. So what could that have been? These are all just things that I want people to think about when they're carrying on about who's getting who for 2 days of the month or the week or whatever. Just really you need to be thinking about the child. What does the child want? What's in the best interest for the child? And this
Yeah,
is
because we
tricky.
all know that the best interest is for them to have as close to equal time and their parents in their lives. We already know that, but sometimes that's not what they're given, and we want them to make the best of what they do have, because that is the most important time for that child to have that connection with you. And one of the things you said about grandparents, I never met a grandparent until I was 6 years old. I never met anybody else in my family until I was 6. The only family that I knew was my mom and my dad, and then the step family. That's it. So it was really strange when I finally did get to meet my grandmother, which was very short because my mom and her were not on speaking terms when I was born at all. So they wrote each other off for all those years. And then it was really out of the blue that she decided to send me down, back down to Florida to visit with my grandmother that I got to spend a short period of time with. So I never really got to get to know them as well as I should have been able to.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my girlfriends this morning who's also called Alyse. I'm hoping that she's in the chat. I can't see who's in the chat room.
She was in here waiting for us. I know she was. So she's probably in here somewhere.
Okay. Yeah. So I was talking to her about PA today. So she didn't know about it, and she's all on board a lot of stuff. So I really think that we need to be really educated in this stuff and to just don't align with people who have agendas around time with children or bad mouthing other parents or other family members. Why are you listening to this? Why is my question? You're not thinking about the child. Like, just stop the gossip, stop the aligning stuff.
Yeah. Well, because kids are watching and they're learning. Kids watch everything. They learn everything. They're at the ground level. They watch and they learn it from whoever is giving it to them. So especially for ones that don't get to spend time, make that the best quality time you could possibly give them. And that's the most important part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because as we get older too, we need people to come in and help us. Like the amount of times I've really wanted my dad to be around because I knew he was a panel beater and like could spray cars. The amount of times I could have used that skill, I tell you, and just been with him and just had that time with him. You know, because growing up without a male around is very, very difficult too, because then you have to basically do everything for everybody. Look, that's a double-edged sword, because on one hand I can chop down trees, you know, take chainsaws apart, put them back together, do all of this stuff, but like it'd be really good if I had somebody else who was around with me to kind of just be a dad and say, you know, come here with me, honey, just be with me, you know, just I'll take care of that with you, instead of growing up having to do everything, male and female, all the time. Like I love it when men open a car door for me or a door for me, or like I love it because it's something that we're not used to either. So
No, and I had to do the same thing where, you know, I was more mechanical, and I think I learned that. My dad is mechanical, very mechanical, and for some reason, somehow, I did take on that trait, and I fix stuff on my own. I don't fix my car anymore.
Yeah.
That up, but I'll pay someone to do that.
Yeah.
But you know, we
Yeah.
do tend to. You know, I was more of a tomboy growing up. I wasn't, you know. It's just, it changes us in some ways where we're having to figure out some of those things on our own, and sometimes they just come and we don't know why.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and we just yeah, do you want to see if anyone has any questions, Dawn?
Yeah, there are tons in here, and we do
Oh,
want
really?
to we do want to
Great.
get, I want to make sure we have time to go through your senpai model, but let's go through and see if we can grab some of these questions real quick. Let's see. Okay, April says, I divorced in Port Augusta, Australian, and oh my God, wait, I am happy to meet someone who understands the bloke outlook on things. It makes a
Okay.
difference, me being an American. That's cool. Okay, Linda, I think the public will finally open their eyes when the children victims of adult survivors speak out. And that's exactly why we are doing this. We're hoping that we can start
Yeah.
getting people to wake up. Stephanie
Yep.
says, what is your experience in a sibling of the alienated child with a different bio father, bio not involved, starts or has already alienated also, and then sibling almost an adult?
Well, my father never had any children, other biological children with any, he's had 2 wives since my mother. So he's never had any biological children. He had stepchildren, but I never saw them because we had such a huge, it's 25 years between when I saw my dad and when I reunited with him. So there's that massive gap where I have no idea. But I also, having said that, know that the research says that when couples separate, it's the new stepmother who can be extremely alienating of children who belong to their partner. And sometimes the male, like the men can do that too, of the women if they marry women with children, but the research is saying that it's more women who can do that. So stepmothers can be extremely alienating of the new husband's biological children, so that's something to be aware of as well. So that's just what the research says, and in my experience, that's what I've seen as well. And one of my lecturers, who is a family systems therapist, has said the same thing. So keeping in mind that there's limited research on this subject, so don't take it as gospel, but that's what is being indicated at this point. So I don't know about you, Dawn, whether you can answer that question a little bit more.
Well, I'm the only child, and then the only other child in the scenario is a stepsister. So
Yeah.
she wasn't alienated. She still had her mom abandoned her, but it was still someone that she had connections with still, even though she wasn't there or wasn't around. So,
Yeah, that's a
but I
tricky
do
one.
know that there's a lot of people out there that have siblings, children that are, in families that it's like the dynamic. It just seems like it just continues, that transgenerational thing you were talking about earlier, where if it happened to you as a child, you grow up and you think, I'm not gonna be that way. And then sometimes they're the ones that are targeted.
Yeah, that's what the research is saying too.
Mhm.
It's because they're saying it that the children who are often bonded to alienated parents grow up and they think that that is normal, so they're very attracted to women or men who have those same traits that the alienated parent had. That's their normal, so they'll often marry a wife or a husband who has the same personality disorder because they think that's
Yeah.
normal. So and then they find themselves as a targeted parent.
Yeah.
So often that's the dynamic according to the research.
Okay. Stephanie, I hope that answered your question. If not, post it down and we'll get to that here in a second. So Steve says, I include this is for leaving the breadcrumbs. I include my phone number with text messages to my daughter and ask how she's doing, and always end the message with, I love you unconditionally and you are welcome back into everyone's lives anytime. Love always, Dad.
Wonderful.
And he doesn't get a response, but
Doesn't matter. It's
yeah.
landing and it's planting the seed. And one day when she's in trouble or there's a crisis of some kind and there's no one else standing in her corner, that's when she's going to be coming. So be ready.
Yep.
Be open, be healthy, be ready. Don't be on the drink and on the drugs. Don't be that guy, because you're not going to be there for her either. Remember, these children have abandonment stuff. So if you're there and you're using any kind of drugs or alcohol and we come to you, you're not going to be there for us. We're going to turn around and go, another one who's not there for us. Don't be that person.
Don't, right, exactly. Okay, Robert, this is so great to hear. So many parents who have been alienated believe their kids hate them and have no hope for reconnecting. And I will say, and I know you'll probably agree, the last thing I ever did was hate my father.
Absolutely. It's not in our hearts. No, that's not what's happening in our hearts. It's not what's happening. And I was a very young child too. So any children who are older than me, I consider them lucky if they've been they haven't had their parents start the alienation stuff until they're a bit older, because they've had all those years of memories. They don't go away. You can be getting told stuff by the alienating parent, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to land or we're going to believe it.
Yeah.
So this is what a lot of the reunification therapies do. They bring in children and they bring in the photos of the memories, and they say, look at this memory, look at this photo, like weren't you having a good time? And they make you question, like, yeah, actually it was. So they sit in that, maybe everything I'm being told isn't true, but they don't have a voice around that. They can't say, hey, they're children, they're little kids. They can't say, hey, Mom, are you lying or exaggerating or trying to get me on your side? That doesn't happen until we're older. And I tell you what, if you're doing that and we figure it out, you better be careful, because that day is not going to be a good day for you if you're an alienating parent and we figure out what you've been doing and what you've taken from us. Don't be that parent, because we are really strong and we've got big voices, and that is not going to be a good day for you. I mean, you might have us as children on your side, but the day is going to come where we figure out what you've been doing, and then we're going to be going to the targeted parent. So be ready for when we turn up.
Yeah, and so one of the things I've said is, you might think it's worth it now because it's convenient and you're cutting out another parent and it's easier for you. And you have this great relationship with your child, but how are you going to feel that one day when that child says, I've had enough and walks away? That's what they're facing. That's really what they're facing. So they can get away with this for a while, but eventually they're going to get caught in it.
Yeah.
And then they're going to pay a dearer price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there's people like Dawn and I. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we're banding together. Yep.
Yeah. And we are raising the volume on this.
Absolutely.
Okay. Tiffany says, love what you guys are saying. This is exactly what my brother and entire family is going through. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
His ex-girlfriend lied to all of us and took off with his 8-month-old son. Oh, so young, 8 months old when he was 5 weeks old. It was sad and extremely heartbreaking to think he is missing out on bonding with his child. What emotional effects on the baby if he ever can gain any custody.
Yeah.
That's the hard one because they're so young. We don't know, was he around when, were they together at all? Because sometimes that bond is created in the womb. When they hear your voice, they sense you around. So sometimes the bond's created early. It depends. It's hard to say.
Yeah, we're talking about really early attachment stuff now. So if I was going to give him any advice, I'd be like, fight really hard to get to see that child no matter what. Do it.
So what's important is language too, on not why you have a right to be in that child's life. It's why that child has a right for you to be in his life.
Yes.
Turn the language around and make it always make it about the child's best interest. Tell the judge, my child needs to know who I am. My child needs to know who his family is.
Yes.
That's the importance of bringing that into court. And we had lawyer Leslie on a couple weeks ago, and this is what she was talking about as well, is language is super important. So for someone that young, that's your best bet, is fight and use the right language.
Yeah, get some legal advice on that with people who are very, very good with parental alienation, not anyone who has any legal stuff. If they don't know what PA is, run a mile.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
I mean, fight as hard as you can for as long as you can.
Yep.
Don't quit until you can't keep going. Till something.
And hopefully his name's on the birth certificate.
Yeah, that's another thing too. That's a very important thing. And my dad wasn't married to my mom, so it's very important. And his name was on my birth certificate, so he had that. But at the same time, it was in the 70s, so he didn't have a lot of resources for him at that point either. So
no.
Yeah. All right. Steve says, I have even sent Christmas gifts to my daughter, including my ex-wife and her new husband, but yet never hear anything back. I have 3 sons that are not alienated, and they have a good relationship with their mother, which I promote. I just wish that the same would be done in turn by my ex-wife for me. A lot of this alienation also stems from past silver bullets. That's the hard part too. I mean, that's
document it. If you're sending pictures, keep diaries. If you're thinking about your child, write it down. Write down stories for them that were positive, with memories about you and that child. Make sure that every time you send a card or anything like that, you document it, because one day if they show up and they're like, why didn't you ever do this or call me or do this, you say, here, this is how much I love you. This is how much I loved you. This is how much I missed you.
Yeah, and I think Caroline Rena, she actually took pictures front and back and inside the card before she sent it. So she had a record of envelope, that handwritten out, addressed, and what was in the card. So that's another good way.
Beautiful.
Get yourself a little tub, and every time you do that, just keep putting everything in that tub, and that's where it all stays, nice and safe.
Yeah, and that there's a group for fathers, and I've posted a couple of things on my Twitter about it, where the children can actually go and look for the fathers. I don't know whether the mothers have got a group like that. I know there's a fathers one where if the child is looking for their parent, they can go there and the person can actually post messages to their children.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. I'll find it while we're talking.
Okay, we'll post that in the chat later, guys, for you. Whoops, did I scroll down? No. Okay, here's Steve. Steve also says, my daughter has graduated high school now. The alienation has been 7 years, and I'm hoping in her adulthood that she will have some enlightening as you to have. How long will it take for her to come to that point? As with all this crisis, I never know how much time we have left on Earth. And that's the important thing. So if there are any adult children out there listening, and even if your daughter's out there listening, I finally reunited with my father, and he died 2 years later. So there is really no time to waste. The more time you waste, the less time you get. So don't wait. If you're thinking about it, then you already know you want to do it. So do it.
Yeah. And if the worst case scenario is that you don't connect with the child that you're alienated from, you can definitely do things like put them in the will, write letters, make videos for them so that they get all of these if you pass in the meantime, and it's you're not left without a voice.
Good ideas. Those are great ideas. Leave them something of you behind.
Absolutely. And write down things about your history and your family, because these are all pieces that Dawn and I are searching for now. Like, make it easy for us.
Yeah.
Make it easy for your child. Do it now. Everything you can think of.
Exactly. Because I know that if I would have found my dad and it was too late, I would have been devastated.
Yeah.
But, just having some things, like in my case, I never saw baby pictures of myself until I reunited with my dad. So we always joked about, I just appeared at the age of 4 because nothing existed of me before that. So when I reunited with him, that's when I got all those pictures of me as a baby and the infant photos. And, those were really sentimental, very important to me. So it's going to be just as important to the other children that are reaching out, even if it's gone to the point where the parent maybe passes on, that they have something of you. So you record that, do leave them letters and video, and Zoom is free. Keep recording it. It's automatically saves to your computer. Give them a thumb drive, leave it in a vault or a safe or something, so that they can have a piece of you forever. And that could be really huge for them.
Yeah. And I just want to say again, even though my story, we were very young when my dad was alienated from us, I still had that feeling, this gnawing feeling that even though I was being told all these terrible things that he was going to do to us, or people we didn't know were going to do with us and everything, I knew in my heart he was not going to do that. No. It wasn't true, but you can't say anything. It's a feeling, it's intuition. It's about your heart. And even when I would go out on some contact visits, and Dad said to me the other day that we had about 20 contact visits. Most of them I don't remember, because I was probably in such a heightened state with all the phone numbers and money and being taken, blah, blah, blah. It took the joy out of the contact visits. But he said, I'd have these contact visits with you kids, and you'd be so terrified when I went to pick you up. You'd have this look on your face like, oh, the monster's arrived. He said, that's why I stopped coming in to pick you up, because I couldn't bear seeing what it was doing to you little kids every time you saw me, because I had a feeling about what you were being fed. But having said that, part of me knew that it was very double-edged sword, because part of me thought it would come true because of what I was being told, but then the other part of me was saying, no, it's not real. So that part is the part that always stayed with me. So this is the psychological splitting that we experience as children of severe PA. Right. So once we've really moved over into the psychological splitting of the alienating parent, and we're really having to take on what they're saying and the stories for our own safety and sake in the home with them. There's always a part of us that doesn't believe it.
Right.
And this goes right across all the research. All the adult survivors and who say this all say the same thing, pretty much. There's a few who don't, but most of us say the same thing. And I don't know what that's like for you, Dawn.
Yeah.
But that was definitely my
one of the things you mentioned just a second ago was you were talking about the controlling and the part where we're not allowed to speak. And it's kind of ironic that my mom was my gatekeeper. That's what I called her. That part of her that controlled this aspect of my life, that particular personality that I saw in her was the gatekeeper.
Yep.
And we're embarking on, we're going to be putting on a virtual conference here pretty soon. And it's kind of ironic that it's called Guardians and Gatekeepers. So we have guardians that are healthy or a safe parent, and then we have gatekeepers right now. So it really does fit when it comes to the child. That's where we're at. We're looking at our guardian and our gatekeeper.
Yeah, totally.
So,
I agree. Yeah.
Ooh, crazy stuff. Robert says, I think the main issue here for kids is that they don't get to pick their parents and they want nothing more than to love them. That is like the best, that is absolutely
Beautiful.
100% true.
Yeah, dead set.
Absolutely true.
100%.
We didn't pick you, you are us.
Yeah, that's right. We're a combination of the two of you. And you chose to have us in the first place. You chose to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And then therefore our human right is to grow up in a safe space, not with psychological abuse, none of that.
Yeah.
And
we have lots of relationships in life, right? We pick our friends. We can decide, okay, well, we're not friends anymore. We pick, relationships, and we can decide, okay, well, we don't get to pick that. We are who our parents are, and there's nothing that can replace that. That's inside of us. And there's a lot of kids out there that might reject that might deny that. It's more of a denial and maybe the rejection could be because of the pain that it's going to bring. And sometimes they actually know that it's painful. So it's easy to reject it maybe.
And not all children who are growing up in a PA environment are moved over into the psychological splitting, especially if they're older children. They know what's going on. It's still really detrimental for them, and they're in a low-lying sort of current of PA, but they don't necessarily psychologically split to the alienated parent. Right. So there's that too. So it's different forms, and that's what my research is going to be looking at as well. So,
and that's where mine was. I never believed my mom. I still had that bond and that connection with my dad, even though I was never allowed to talk about it. I was never allowed to refer to him as my dad. Her new husband was my dad. And that's just that was the law of the land. That was it. That's what I had to live within the law that I was given.
That's right.
I didn't have the choice, but I do have the choice of what I think. I get to control what I feel. Nobody else gets to tell me that. And that's the part that we want to address with the kids today. We want to address that. That's who we're speaking to. We're talking to your inside voice. Yeah. We're using the outside voice. We want to talk to your inside voice.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The courts, it would be in their best interest to listen to what we have to say. Mm-hmm. Because they're not listening to the children. Well, it's not great to have a child in court at any point. It's not okay to do that, and to have them like even involved in that process. Like, what are you thinking?
Speaking of courts, we need to be your expert witness. We are the subject matter experts. We are your expert witness. When you go to court, you need to have someone that understands what's going on with the child, and that's us. We can talk to them about what children go through. So that's something I think I would like to see happening more in our court systems and with our legislators. Frankly, they need to hear what we think. And I don't see that happening. I see them saying what we think, but that's...
they're telling us what we think. Yes. And no. And also, if you're an academic speaking without experience, that's okay on one level, but really we need academics with lived experience to also stand up and say, okay, this, that, this is the research, this is the experience. Are they weighing up? Yes, no, whatever.
That's even one level more of a subject matter expert, because now you have the expertise and the experience together, and that's even better. All right, Linda says, do you think an alienated teenager who is erased from her father for about 7 years still has love and interest for her father, even if she appears to be extremely attached and alienating mother? Yes to both.
Absolutely.
Over a period of a number of years, she hasn't been, extremely disrespectful towards father when in mother's presence, then progressed to calling him by his first name, which progressed to her stating she hated him, then progressed to no contact at all. So,
classic.
Yeah.
Classic alienation on a whole other level. Yep. The campaign of denigration, the weak, frivolous, absurd reasons for the campaign, the independent thinker phenomenon where the children will profess and go overboard that it's their ideas, not potentially the alienating parents. The absence of guilt about the treatment of the targeted parent is another one of the symptoms that they exhibit. The reflections of automatic support, so they'll be saying things that the alienating parent will be saying, and they'll be using it as well towards the targeted parent. It's basically word for word. It's not things that children ever say. So you can tell there's all these different flags around these behaviors. So, and the other one's presence of borrowed scenarios, so phrases and scenarios borrowed from the alienating parent. Like you can hear them. They're not from the child. It's a big flag of alienation.
Yeah. And that's pretty common phrasing too. That happens, right? I mean, I think that's common in the kids when they start by calling them the first name and then.
Yeah. And keep in mind that young woman, if she's doing this in front of the targeted parent, it will be part of the psychological splitting that she's been involved in or moved over into. So for her to maintain a balanced house when she goes back home with the alienating parent, she needs to display some level of alliance with the alienating parent against the targeted parent, because if she doesn't, when she goes back home, then she's going to get questioned as to why she didn't, or if she says anything nice to the targeted parent, when she gets home, she can be potentially punished in all sorts of different ways. So it's not safe for them to do that. Like they have to maintain this facade.
It's almost like as if the targeting parent needs to allow them to react that way, knowing that's why they're doing it.
Well, they triangulate with the child. That's what's happening here. So if they're seen at any point to be triangulating with the targeted parent against them, then the personality disorder goes into full flight. And now we've got trouble. If you're the child stuck in that space, you've got big trouble. So when we're seeing children displaying this behavior, we're looking at really severe PA stuff going on at home. So just take that into consideration when you're seeing children exhibiting these behaviors. It's in their best interest.
It's hard. I imagine what it's like, but it's not you. It's not.
No. It's not personal. Don't take it personally. It's not personal. They don't even know what's going on a lot of the time.
No, you're actually the safe person to do this with. You're the one that they know that it's safe, that they need to act that way.
Absolutely. They have to for their own psychological well-being back at the house.
It's a twisted mess, but it definitely, All right, let's see. Did any of your maternal extended family members ever let on to you about what was going on, or did they not have any idea?
They were all aligned in my case with my alienating mother. They were all aligned in the campaign, all of them, except I saw my aunt when my sister's husband died. Tragic circumstances. We were all at the funeral. It was the first time that my dad had ever shown up to a major event in our lives. It was big. It took a lot of the focus off the funeral, but we were really happy that he was coming, my sister and I. We were really, really happy that he was coming. For him to step into that space with all the alienators from all the years with their campaign against him, like, we were very protective of him that day. I had to stand with him and say, no, back off. Like, as an adult, I had to stand in that space, and that's hard because now you're taking on the whole maternal side of the family at this point to protect him, and all he wanted to do was go to his daughter's husband's funeral who'd died.
To support his child.
Exactly. And it was cause a whole bunch of stuff.
So that's putting the child first, right? This is where he was putting his daughter first, and you know, the other side wasn't. And for my mom's side of the family, my mom and my grandmother were not on speaking terms. My grandmother hated my dad, and I guess pissed off because he was taking her away from her. So there was this like rivalry between my dad and my grandmother over who was going to control my mother. And my dad was just like, well, she's kind of like carrying my child, so it really kind of mattered. But the problem with my maternal side of the family was that none of them had this relationship. It was like none of them really. I was 6 years old before I even got to meet any of them. And then it was a short visit. It was shortened. It was supposed to be longer, but it ended up getting short. And then it just took a long time to meet the rest of the family. So I didn't get to meet them for quite a while. And still, I got to know some of my cousins more now than I ever did as a child. So,
but I remember my aunt coming over to my dad at that funeral, who's my mum's sister, who was part of the alienation stuff, and saying, hi, it's nice to see you. And I thought, you know what? Good on you. Yeah. Like, she was the only one who did it. And I thought, oh no, I think my uncle actually came over, her husband as well, because they had a double wedding. My mum and my dad and her sister and husband, they had a double wedding. So they were all in the same wedding party years and years and years ago. So yeah, that was odd. But they both came up and said that to him, and I thought, yeah, good, okay, at least I'm not going to be having to push them back as well.
Yeah.
Like, fair income, when does this stuff stop? It doesn't stop, is my point.
Yeah. No. Okay, let me hit a few. Let me see. Oh my gosh, we keep getting more and more questions. It's going on 2 hours too. This has been a good one. This is what my family is so fearful for. This is from Tiffany. That as an aunt and my mother as a grandmother will never be able to have wonderful, healthy relationship with my baby nephew. And that's the hard part. Terrible. Is that side of the family knows, they know, and they're missing. They know what they're missing.
Yeah. So we need education out there. It's the only way that we're going to stop this is by talking about it. We have to talk about it. We have to have it in general conversation. It can't be like years, 30, 40 years down the track, and then we get on and have a conversation about this. We need to have this in universities, schools, everything. Everybody needs to be watching out for it. We need to be extremely careful about aligning with people when they're divorcing, when there's court stuff going on. We don't do it, because this is what we saw in our family. My whole mum's family all aligned with her, and they didn't even question what was going on.
Yeah, schools and people that are outside of the family, that particular family unit, they need to not align with the parents. They need to align with the child.
That's right.
If you're going to align with anybody, then align with the child.
And be very careful of people who are saying their side of the story. You're not listening
There's
to the
always
other
their
side of the
side
story.
Right.
And it's not okay to just be hearing them and believing everything they say, because people with personality disorders are very manipulative, and they will get you on side, and they will make stuff up to keep you on side. And if it's a very hard space for people, but we have to stand up and go, no, don't want to get involved. What's the best interest for the child? If you need to talk to someone, go see a therapist. Not me.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in your story. I'm interested in what's happening for this child. And what are you doing about the relationships with this child? I know you're divorcing from this wife, but is this child still going to be able to see their grandparent? Be that person. Don't be the person who goes, oh my God, she's been so awful to you, or he's been so awful to you. Oh my God. Yeah, no, I agree. Don't let them see that side of the family. Don't be that person.
Yeah.
Stand up, have some guts, speak for the child. No.
You need a court document or something that is valid before you just take someone's word for it.
Look, if there's child abuse, that sort of stuff, or domestic violence, it's a different kettle of fish. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what is the best thing for the child. It's not about DV. It's not about gender issues. It's not about politics.
Because if that was involved, then the school would be obligated to report that. So we're not talking about the situations where there is domestic violence. We're not saying that it doesn't exist, and we're not saying that anybody should ignore that. That's a whole different issue.
Absolutely.
When two parents that are no longer getting along, it's in a high conflict divorce, and there is no domestic violence. Those are the ones that we're referring to, right?
Yeah, there's sometimes DV in there, but even again, like there's different levels within DV. So, and that's a very, very, very tricky subject. So I did see some DV between my dad and my mum, but that was, for me, his frustration at not being allowed to see us. So he would throw things. That is a form of DV. But then again, so is psychological abuse. So, there's all sorts of family and domestic violence. There's like 9 categories, and within the 9 categories, there's a whole string of other things that go in there. So DV is much bigger than just fighting with people, punching people, hurting people. It's psychological abuse, it's financial abuse, it's all sorts of abuse. There's if we were really to look at it, family and domestic violence is rife throughout society anyway. So it's a very different conversation. But if there's really dangerous situations involved, that's not what we're talking about.
Right. Good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Stephanie says, I'm afraid my older child, almost an adult, is affected by the pathogen, even though he is not bio or in the same household as alienating parent. Advice.
So were they exposed to the pathogen?
I'm afraid my older child, that's now almost an adult, is affected by the pathogen, even though he is not bio or in the same household.
So if I was to guess, I'm thinking that child was psychologically split to the alienating parent. If I'm guessing, I don't have much context here. So maybe still having signs of that. So just hold on, keep speaking to them, stay open to them. Hopefully they'll start looking for answers sooner or later. It's like they've had a cult leader in with them. Right. And for children in this situation, all the research is saying that the cult-like behavior that the alienating parent exhibits is actually harder to break away from than if you were in a cult. So it's children who've been really brainwashed on a whole other level. So if you think about, and Amy Baker speaks to this, she said, if you can imagine an adult being sucked into a cult and doing that. Can you imagine how hard it would be for children if they're being exposed to those cult-like behaviors? And then the added layer is it's even harder for them than if you're an adult and leaving a cult. It's even harder for that child because it's their parent. You can get away from a cult leader, but when it's your parent, you think biologically they're supposed to protect you. They're not supposed to do anything to harm you. They're not supposed to be creating psychological
You're supposed to be able to
splitting.
trust them with your life.
Exactly. So that's a very, very confusing enmeshment.
You go to them for food, you go to them for shelter, you go to them for survival. And so you rely on them 100%.
And the therapeutic treatment is what I'm going to be looking at with my PhD for people who are in this space or have come through this space, and what treatment is available for them, because it's very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. And all you can do with that particular child, teenager, is to stay in unconditional positive regard, stay open to them, stay open. Do not question anything they say. Do not try and alter their perceptions. You have to wait for them to come to you.
Yes.
Wait for a crisis or some sort of event or life event for them to come to you. We have to wait. You have to wait for them. You cannot go in and try and muck around with that stuff. If they're seriously bonded to the abuser, that's a very different space. We have to wait.
Yeah, and you have to remember that they do love them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Linda says, how does it make you feel to know that you were alienated from your loving grandparents? I mean, I think we might have talked about that a little bit, where for me, I know now what I missed out on. So now it's maddening. And I know that, there should have been more. How about you?
Yeah, so for us, I spent a few years with my grandparents when I was quite young, like I think 3 till probably 8. So, and then we were moved into state. Yeah, we were moved into state, away from them. And I cannot tell you how angry, upset, I was in grief about that, about being taken away from them, like being cut off from that whole side of the family, or even the maternal side, we were then cut off from then. So now we were left isolated. Yeah.
Yeah, that age group. I mean, that's like grandma's like the bomb.
That's right.
Grandpa can be like, that's just amazing time frames for children when they're bonding with grandparents. Grandparents are very important during that stage. And from what I hear.
Well, one of my siblings does talk about that quite often, how angry they are about that having happened. And that is continual grief that we have to keep processing, because I remember saying, I don't want to leave them. And she said, too bad.
Yeah, and that's stuff that we know, even as children, we know we can't get that back.
Yeah.
That's a loss. That is a loss of a living person. Just like, in a lot of ways, just like our parent that was, taken away from us. We're grieving that living person. It's grief. It's no different for a child. To me, how I describe it is not knowing what happened to him. It's either that he's dead or that he rejected me. So I have two choices to, and as a child, I can't possibly comprehend that. There's no possible way a child can understand that.
Yeah.
It's devastating.
Yeah. So it's awful. So I was allowed to see them during school holidays. I was allowed to call them and talk to them because they were my mother's parents. So I was still allowed to have that limited connection, but you can't be talking about anything that you're not allowed to be talking about. Phone calls are monitored. So they were aligned with my mum. So there's all these covert rules that go on that you know about. It's pretty crap.
I'm going to go through here and see if I can pick out some questions, because we've got 38 I haven't even gotten to yet of comments. So I'm going to try and scroll through here. Would it be proper to ask my daughter if she would like to participate in reunification?
Would it be proper if you'd like to ask your daughter if she'd like to participate in reunification? Well, you know what? As long as it wasn't loaded with stuff, like, and this is why I want to get my story across. This is this is what happened, blah blah. If it was just a gentle reunification, I miss you, I love you, I want you back in my life. Unconditional positive regard. I'm completely 1,000,000% interested in you as a human being. I want to be what you need, what you would like me to be. If that's like one visit every month, okay, I'm open to that. If it's just a phone call, I'm open to that. What is it that you would like from me? If it was along those lines, it was really
So let them
gentle.
set the pace.
Pardon?
Let them set the pace.
Yeah, definitely. And just don't be critical. Don't have a hidden agenda. Just be the loving parent who's healthy and lovely and happy. And, you know, if you can pull that off, why not try it?
You know, the worst you're going to get is a no.
That's right. And then you can maybe try it again later, or you can say something like, okay, I'm always going to be here. Is it okay if I send you cards on your birthday or something like that? Would you be open to that? Or a Christmas present, something like that. If they say yes, okay, there's your opening. If not,
Yeah.
okay, I understand, but I want you to know that I really love you and I really miss you, and I'd love to sort of try and build a relationship with you on your terms, and just try and be that person.
Right. Yeah. Very important. Very important. Someone's asking, how can we get your help on expert witness? Any numbers to reach out to you? So I think I have the correct email address and your Facebook page and stuff that I'll post in here. I have your Gmail email address. Is that the one you want?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Well, expert witness in court is not something that I do at all. So that's more a Dr. Childress thing or an Amy Baker thing. They are expert witnesses in court to call in. They are all over it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been considering doing it, so it's not something I've done myself, but
Yeah.
not yet. But I think that there needs to be
Yeah.
someone like us as an expert witness. So that's something
Yeah.
that we are, or that I am considering, maybe others are considering it. It's something that I can do to try and help. So we're talking about it. Let's see if I can find encapsulated persecutory delusion. That was from Michelle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. I grew up with that. That's all I've ever known, Michelle. I'm very aware of that dynamic. It's very dangerous. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. I've been told teenage bedwetting is a result of abandonment.
I can't really speak to that.
I don't know.
I don't know about that either. It can, no, I don't know.
I
I've
was
heard it linked to
abandoned.
child sexual abuse. I've heard it linked to that, but I don't know about abandonment. I don't know.
Well, I was abandoned, but I was potty trained very early. So I never had that. So I don't know. I don't know if that's either. See, this is such a huge learning process with the courts, judges, and lawyers. My brother and I have never gone through anything like this. We were lucky enough that our parents were married for 48 years before our father passed away. That was from Tiffany. Thank you for sharing. Michelle says they need a diagnosis and treatment plan. This is a child psychological abuse. Child needs a protective separation.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with this. There's a lot of problems. A lot of the time when we have parents with narcissistic personality disorders and borderline, they will not come into treatment. They will often really go hard after the therapist. It's a very dangerous area to work in for therapists. That's why a lot of them don't work in PA. They can be targeted by that parent. Karen Woodall, for example, here, she's the writer of Understanding Parental Alienation. She's got a huge campaign against her at the moment from trolling. because she's trying to get out there about PA. She's even had a somebody with a restraining order. I think she's been stalked for the last 5 years, she told me. It's a very dangerous field to work in. It's a very dangerous field to research, and yeah, there's a lot of people who don't believe in it, but as a child survivor of it, I am very much you can't deny Dawn's and my experiences. It's not something that it's just not, and I'm not even going to ever entertain that it's not a real thing. Like, nah. So not even ever going to have that conversation. It's not even going to, I'm not even going to waste my time.
It's not an argument. There's no argument.
No, yeah, like next. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's
like
saying to children that child sexual abuse didn't happen to them. It's like, really? What gives you the right to actually say that? You weren't there. You weren't in the room. You weren't that child. Like, just don't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's see. I think I thought I found a question, but I kept scrolling and now I can't find it.
Okay. Not meant to be, Dawn.
There's a lot of comments in here. Well, one of them, I think it was talking about, oh my goodness. I got to find it. Where is it? Because I think it would actually lead right into, it was about coronavirus. Let me find that. If I can pull out Corona in there. Here it is. Bobby Burke. I just started watching. My ex has taken my son away from me, saying that she wanted to get away from the coronavirus in North Carolina from New York. She in the past has told me that she wants to move to North Carolina with my son and her boyfriend, my son's friend's father, and they bought a house. Oh boy, that's a mess. My son has told me what kid wouldn't want to move to North Carolina? Oh, that's tough. You can get your license at 15. School is easier. You don't have to take regents there, and they have good skate parks there. So that's the draw.
All the things that I've heard all the time about moving. Every single time we were moved, that was the justification. That was the carrot that was dangled. It's a classic thing to do. There's going to be better schools there. You'll have more friends. You'll have more blah, blah. I'll get you this. You can have that, blah, blah, blah.
Like, you want this.
It's just a typical thing to do, to be doing that to a child, and it's not okay. The other downside to that is, what about the loss of relationship now with that parent? You know, like, can you stop her from some sort of order to stop them from moving? Because I know that we can do that over here, but it's enforcing it that's the tricky bit. And I don't want to talk too much about courts and law and things, because I just don't want to. Definitely. It's not my area. But
get legal advice, right?
Get legal advice.
And get a motion to modify or whatever you need. You definitely need an attorney about that. Because it doesn't matter what the child wants to do in this situation. It's not the child's choice to move to North Carolina.
Yeah, unless they're being brainwashed into thinking it's going to be a better idea.
Well, then they want to, but it's not really their decision to make.
Yeah. So it's messy, really messy. I'm sorry that's happening.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible to, but what I wanted to pull out of that is mentioning coronavirus, and we're coming up on 2 hours. So thank you everybody for sticking in here with us. I hope we got to all your questions, but I want to kind of take it to another quick angle real quick. We have a lot of concerns with access to children during our quarantine, and you are the creator of the Senpai social communication model, and you use this to help in this situation. And actually in a global situation. So I kind of want to try something really quick. I want to see if I can play your little quick PA video. It's a short one. I'm going to see if I can make it work here. So bear with me while I try and set this up. See if I can share my screen. And I want to share this one. And I'm going to make this bigger. Okay. Hopefully everybody can hear this. Maybe I better stick my microphone down over here just in case. Hope builds a home, and these walls of snow, and it's where you need to be, between the bricks and the fallen leaves, between the stones and the summer breeze. All we need is a house we can breathe in. Hope builds a home and it's scars you believe in.
Yeah, that's one of my PA videos. Yeah. So the Senpai social communication model I wrote, that comes in 2 brochures. There's a child's version and an adult's version. We use it with children 5 and up. And basically I wrote this because as a child we didn't have any voice. And if somebody had asked me these questions, they're just general questions about how I'm sleeping, what I'm thinking about, how am I feeling emotionally, have I had enough to eat and drink, how am I feeling physically, am I feeling included in community. That's what the Senpai stands for. Sleep, emotion, meet your basic needs, physical health, and inclusion in community. If I'd been asked these questions, I may have been able to talk about what was going on for us, but we were so hidden and under such a veil of silence and so psychologically split, we had no voices. So I wrote the Senpai model, and it basically teaches children from 5 and up to about 10 how to sit with each other in the classrooms and go through this model. It basically, if you say to somebody, "Are you okay?" and they say no, we say, "How's your senpai?" And they go through with each other, the little kindy kids, the little grade 1ers, they all sit there and they go through this and they're like, "How did you sleep last night? Are you having trouble going to sleep? Did you get enough sleep? Did you have any dreams you'd like to talk about? Did something wake you up? Do you feel safe where you sleep? Would you like to talk more about sleep, or would you like an older person to help?" So that's just an example of all the first set of 8 questions. So it gets the kids to talk about all this sort of stuff, and they sit with each other and they can talk about these stories. Well, sleeping, am I feeling safer? I'm sleeping. No, we're packing again. We're about to move. I've got to change schools. Like, I'm getting woken up in the middle of the night because something's going on. The front door, someone's knocking at the front door. Is that the person who's coming to take us? Like, is now the time when this is going to happen, or what's happening now? So it gives us an opportunity to speak. And then hopefully, if a teacher noticed, because we have this in about 20 countries across the world, it's a free model. I don't make any money out of it. I wrote it as a child in parental alienation. These are the questions I wanted people to ask me. That's where the model comes from. So hopefully, if we're using it in the classrooms, children who are in PA will talk up, and children who are being bullied will talk up. Children who are sick will talk up. It speaks to every child in the whole world. We use it. It's right across America and Canada. The police use it. The hospitals use it. The schools use it. Churches use it. Drug and alcohol groups use the adults model. It's basically, this is for adults to speak to each other and drop down to a deeper level of conversation. So it just allows people to sit with each other and go through the questions. So, would you like to talk about these thoughts? Are you feeling calm? Are you having any upsetting emotions? Do you need extra support? Are you having, would you like to help? Would you like me to help you to get professional help? All these questions are all in here. It's just a little guide of how to ask very safe questions. It's not a counseling model at all. It's a listener sharer model. So it's a reciprocal model as well. It teaches empathy. It teaches altruism. So you invite people to come in, and I say to you, Dawn, would you like to come in and go through the senpai model with me? She's very aware of it because we went through it together previously. And we just go through all these different parts of ourselves: sleep and safety, emotion, meals and clothing, how's our physical health, and are we feeling included in community? This speaks to the COVID-19 virus too, because a lot of people are physically unwell. They're not feeling included. So this little pamphlet here we're using on Zoom and Skype right across the world. So yesterday, for example, I spoke to the Philippines. There was about 18 or 19 community leaders who were learning the model so they can go out and teach it to people. And once people learn it, then they can pay it forward. So we don't need funding. It doesn't make us any money. It's a pay it forward model that everyone can use with each other. Children right through to adults in nursing homes use it. Hospices use it. We've got it in children's hospices so the children can have a voice as well. So it's designed, I've designed it over like a 6-year period, and I did it while I was doing my master's because I just thought, everyone's asking, are you okay? But then if someone says no, we don't know how to sit in that space without being sent off to government psychologists and on long waiting lists. And now at the moment, all the centers are closed. Yeah, all the centers are closed. We've got nowhere to go. And they're making a lot of money off us too by not empowering us how to sit with each other. So instead of keep on going out, up to government services, which run out of money, they all need funding, we have the senpai model. So that's an undercurrent model that's just right across the whole world that we use with each other, and especially our children. And we sit down and we teach them this so they've got a better vocabulary. Instead of how are you feeling? Who knows? How do you answer that? You go through this little brochure, and then they can ask you how you are. It's a reciprocal model. It's an intergenerational model too. So grandparents can ask children, children can ask the grandparents. They can ask their friends at school.
Children, it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It gives children, and then the children also, if they're sitting with kids their own age, I hear 8-year-olds saying when they're in this model, because one of the questions in here is, do you have any friends you're worried about? This question, oh my gosh, the answers we get back about this, like 8-year-olds suicidal, like 10-year-olds cutting themselves, another one about to run away. We hear all this stuff, and it gives the children an opportunity to tell their little friends, and then their little friends right at the end, every single one of the bottom of this question, would you like an older person to help? So they're not carrying it all. Right. They can, so it empowers them to have voices, talk to each other. But this model we use with our children when we're having trouble talking to our children, because children, they love this model. They're all over it. They all know. They yell out across the classrooms like, how's your senpai? They all know. So in the classrooms, they do the model in the morning and in the afternoon. So don't think I make any money out of this. I don't. It's just something that I released as an adult survivor of severe child PA, who I just want this out there. So there's no other children kept in that silence like Dawn and I were. Mm-hmm. Somebody has to notice us.
Yes. Well, and it's great for children to have a voice, but it also is great for, like you mentioned, the COVID-19, where people don't know that there's something or someone that's sick and they're lonely and they don't know what to do or where to go. So it helps promote that. But also in my dog wants outside, sorry. She's ringing the bell.
Santa's arriving.
I have her trained. She rings the bell when she wants to go outside.
Okay.
I need to like tape it down when I'm on these.
Yeah. But we're using it in all the hospitals too. All the nurses and doctors and everyone are using this just to keep track of each other's mental and physical health as well. Instead of just saying, are you okay? Right. Yeah. Nah, they're not okay. So we're going through all of these questions with them, and that's you can start your own group at any point. You just go on my website, which is behind me, and download all the instructions and get the free PDFs. Yep, the free PDFs are there as well. You can get the children's model, the adults model. You can start teaching it. I've got 53 videos on YouTube as well with people I've interviewed and just teaching them the model as well and how it works with them. So yeah, you can go and have a look at that. And yeah, that's my model basically. It's everywhere.
It's excellent, but it doesn't just stop with one group. You more or less create a way for all of us to become a first responder. And one thing that happens a lot in parental alienation in this particular group is that there's a lot of depression and parents out there that are taking their own lives. So this gives us a way to communicate with them.
Absolutely.
So this is something we should definitely look into and learn how to speak to each other and support each other. And we don't have to solve the problem. We just have to.
No, you don't. You just have to listen. It's a listener share a model. You don't go out of the model, basically. You ask the questions and you listen. You don't have to be a therapist. You don't have to be a counselor. You don't have to have money. It's not funded. They can never take
the whole thing. Very simple, easy to use.
Yeah, they can never take the money off us because it costs nothing to get it out there.
Right. It's a really, you took me through it last night and it was very, very easy to do. I totally could see where this can be used in so many different ways. It's really a neat model.
Yeah. So how are we going, Dawn? Do you want to do any more questions or do you want to finish? What would you like to do?
Let me see if we got anything question-wise in here. I posted your web page and your email address, and I also posted the Are You Okay video for YouTube. So that once you go there, then you can also see the rest of her amazing videos, and it just kind of gives you an idea of exactly how to use this model and some other things. There's more videos on her web page. I showed you the shorter one. This one's, I think, 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
The one I posted in here. So lots and lots of great information. You can go to her page, sign up. It takes you literally 30 seconds, and then you can download what you need to download and start using this right away. And there's instructions.
Yeah, right throughout your whole communities. Yeah.
And what a way to get this into schools too, and
and hospitals,
schools, the hospitals, the high schools. So this is one way that we can. This is something we can do to be that first responder and really
absolutely. And we're called Senpai First Responders. That's what we're called. So yeah, we don't have to have loneliness or isolation anymore. That's what this model does. It kills it. Like, I cannot believe there's loneliness and isolation in this world. Get real. Go out there with the Senpai model, sit on a park bench, we can't at the moment, but when we're in a safer space, or get on Zoom, start talking to people, teach them this model. They can then pass it, pay it forward. It's a full pay it forward model.
Yeah, it is. And so now when we start telling you guys, how's your senpai, you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
And we can turn that negative, depressed side into, feeling supported and not alone.
Yeah. And children often don't know how to answer that question. How are you? Like, what does that even mean? What do you mean by that? Especially if we're very bonded to that alienator. Like, if we go through this is a lot safer. How are you sleeping? Yeah, pretty bad. Oh, pretty good. It's got a positive side to it as well. It's not all,
Real quick, there's one more question here that I want to give. It's Steve. He's asking, should we send the pamphlet to an alienated child?
If you're not talking to them, I wouldn't be doing that. No. If you are talking to them and they come over to your house for a visit, you can just have a general conversation around it and just say, look, and make it a bit of a game. Say, do you want to ask me some questions? Like, let's do this model together, and you can ask me about how I'm sleeping, what I'm thinking, blah, blah, blah. Keep it simple with the little children. Don't be too honest. Like, just give them examples of how to have conversations. So you can be a little bit honest. Yeah, I had some dreams last night. You know, I'm a bit worried about like what's happening with the COVID-19. Yeah. And just talk just superficial stuff and teach the children how to have voices themselves, and they'll come through and they'll deliver information that'll really shock your socks off.
Yeah. And you can get creative too, because you may not be speaking to your child, but maybe someone else is, and maybe they can bring the model to them and start asking them some questions, or maybe you can take it to the school and let the school distribute it throughout the whole school. And so there's other ways you can kind of go around, and hopefully it will eventually trickle down. My dog is really getting mad at me.
Oh, wow. It's so cute. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So keep working on that. Keep trying. You guys are, doing the best you can. Don't give up. Know that
don't give up.
We do care, and your child cares. Your child loves you. Keep going. Keep leaving breadcrumbs. And
don't give up, because if you give up, we feel like you give up on us. That's how we feel. So, and it might be a year, it might be a month, it might be 20 years. We don't know. You have to leave the space open. Don't give up on us.
Yep. And you can't leave. I know it gets hard to stay. Sometimes the pain can be bad, but you got to be here for us.
Yeah, especially don't do that, because often alienated children, if their parents suicides and they find out that it was something to do with something they had said or something, sometimes the child can twist it around. Then we've got them potentially suiciding. It's a very big, that's a whole other area to talk about. But basically, if you are suicidal, get some help with that. Yes. Really, the last thing that child needs is that as well as
and
everything else.
One of the things I
posted closure. There would be no closure for the child if they ever go through and want to contact you. There's no closure now. There's
massive guilt. And I have a hashtag out there now that is "Don't go, please stay," because of all the things that I wanted from my dad. If he wouldn't have been here and I wouldn't have been able to find him, and if I found out it was because of that, that would have been devastating. And that is more painful for your child than anything else. You just can't, you got to stay. Don't go, please stay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Great questions. And I think we are going to wrap it up. This was a little over 2 hours.
Okay. Wow. Thanks everyone for hanging in.
Yeah. Hang tight, Alyse, just for a second. And Eric, I think you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're ready.